Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, President Trump turns Los Angeles into a deployment zone.
Tensions have been rising since Saturday when Trump deployed 2,000 National Guards to the city to crush protests over raids to deport migrants.
What is happening on the streets of LA and what's really behind this crackdown? I'm Manuel Rapalo, and this is The Take.
I've been involved in the social movement and here in Los Angeles for over a decade. I've been to plenty of marches for immigrant rights. We have our speeches. People talk, give their speeches, and then people go home and nothing happens, right? So who's escalating this is the state by sending in the National Guard, by sending in the Marines, by firing indiscriminately at press, at peaceful protesters. They are the ones escalating the situation, not the protesters. My name is Abraham Marquez. I'm an investigative journalist based here in Los Angeles, California.
Abraham, welcome to The Take. You have been covering these protests since they began last Friday here in Los Angeles, California. We've seen police officers in riot gear, weapons raised, firing non-lethal rounds into the crowd. You yourself were caught in the middle of this, because it's my understanding that you were actually shot with a paintball. How are you, and what have you seen over the course of these last few days?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. It's been some time I've been able to rest. It all started on Friday in the morning. There was alerts that there was ICE presence in the downtown area, what is known as the Santee Alleys, which is a heavily populated Latino community and a lot of undocumented workers. And the community came out to try to prevent ICE from abducting more members of our community. And then there was another alert that they were at a Home Depot near the MacArthur Park area. I actually have a friend who was working at a fast food restaurant right in front of it and witnessed everything and just kind of, I think like a lot of us kind of freeze and just fear and scared that you don't know what to do. And as that was happening, social media kind of went ablaze of people coming out to protest. So they went to the federal building here off Alameda in downtown LA, because that's where they detained some of the undocumented workers. And while I was there documenting and reporting, I want to say they're Homeland Security agents because it's a federal building. They came out and just started shooting at protesters. And while I was there yelling out press, they came out and just started shooting indiscriminately to the crowd. People around me, we all had our press badges, and I got hit in the ankle on Friday. The gentleman next to me got hit a few times in the chest. Then on Saturday, while covering the uprising in Compton, the sheriffs were moving westward on, I believe it was Alondra, and pushing the people out. And there's kind of kettle dust between a building and the line of the sheriffs. I had, again, my press credentials, yelling press. Now, that moment, I noticed about 4 officers pointing in my direction. And I just thought to myself, this is not good. So I was like, I need to just get out of this area. So I turned around and started running out. As I was running out, that's when I got hit in my right butt cheek, I would say. And it stung really, really hard. So I was able to kind of get behind a wall next to a car to kind of just gather myself because they were still shooting into the crowd indiscriminately. So I had a chance to kind of gather myself, and I went across the street to where there was a gas station. And then the cops started shooting in that direction as well while I was there with them. I have a video of that shows me yelling, "This is media, this is media."
He's shooting at media. He's shooting at media. You're shooting at press. Hey, that's press. That's press.
This is press, this is press. And the guy's just unloading into the media side where he hit a few journalists as well.
Talk to us about what it was exactly that set this off. What was going on before these protests happened that really got people to take to the streets?
Yeah, so when Trump was elected, and I think he gave immigration forces a quota of like 1,300 people a day. So there was a coalition that was created of over 60 organizations where they communicate with each other when they see ICE presence, patrolling neighborhoods and putting out the alerts on social media if they see ICE presence. And what kind of sparked this last uprising. Because remember, a few months ago, we saw a massive walkout from youth and from high school students because of the raids that happened a few months ago. So this is just a continuation of that. And what sparked this one was because there was presence of ICE, the Home Depot in Paramount. So when the alert came out, people mobilized. They came out and tried to stop ICE from taking people. And then that's when the sheriffs came in as well and tried to push out the people to allow ICE to do what they do, which is abduct people.
And the response from the federal government, the response from President Donald Trump has been ordering the deployment of some 4,000 members of the U.S. Army National Guard, some 700 Marines to Los Angeles.
What you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and on national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags with the aim of continuing a foreign invasion of our country.
You've been out here reporting on this. You've been at these protests. What are you hearing from protesters themselves and demonstrators over why they're out protesting in the streets?
You know, that's a very good question. So early in the morning on Saturday, there was alerts that there was about a few hundred agents near a Home Depot in Paramount, which was next to a factory that also had about 200 undocumented workers. When the alert came out that they were there, a lot of the workers got in their vehicles and drove off, and the community came out to protest to prevent ICE from abducting them. By the time I got there, the freeway, going on the freeway, I couldn't get by, so I had to detour and go through the Compton side. And sheriffs had blocked off the street to prevent the community to come out and defend the undocumented workers. The police and their whole apparatus were telling people to leave, to get out of here. And the community responded and said, "This is our neighborhood. This is our neighborhood."
It's a shame that you guys are trying to start a civil war on your own people instead of welcoming them for all their aid.
I think that's honestly like what's heartbreaking the most, because they're making it seem like they're really bad people, like criminals, and when they're not, when they're just trying to work hard for their own families.
I think the message from the people was that the cops should leave. That the reason why this is escalating is because they're coming into their community with guns, with armed vehicles, and shooting at people indiscriminately while ICE is abducting people.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because when we say the community, we're talking about Los Angeles. LA County is home to one of the largest immigrant populations in the United States. Nearly 35% of residents are foreign-born. There are families here in Los Angeles who are now currently living in fear and uncertainty over these ICE raids. Can you talk to us about how this is affecting people here in Los Angeles, how this is affecting these families and these communities?
Yeah, 100%. It's affecting families in all aspects of life. You have ICE going to workplaces, going to their court hearings as they're trying to file their paperwork and do things, as they say, the right way. So it's affecting all aspects of life. I have friends in the Central Valley. People aren't going to the yards. They aren't going into the fields to harvest the food that we eat. So that's going to have an effect into the price of food. We're seeing people who are not going to work in the fashion district, in the meat factories. So we're going to see a hard economic effect here for all Angelenos, whether you're documented or you're not.
Some of the stories that I've been seeing certainly are very shocking. On social media, letters that I've seen from students writing to their teachers saying that they're scared they're not going to go back to school because ICE has come into their home and taking one of their parents, so they'll not be returning to their school. There certainly seems to be a chilling effect here in neighborhoods. Families, kids, like we said, avoiding schools, people avoiding hospitals, people avoiding going to church out of fear of being detained or deported.
Yeah, and it's also affecting high school students who are looking to go to college. Because like most poor people will apply for financial aid, for FAFSA. When you're a minor and you apply for financial aid, you have to put your parents' information. Have friends who are high school students. It's been reported that students rather not go to college because they don't want to give the government their address or their information, where it gives them a reason to come into their neighborhood. And this kind of goes into the heels of just a few months ago, we saw a massive walkout led by youth, by the high school students in elementary schools when Trump first started these raids a few months ago.
More with Abraham after the break. So, Abraham, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has said that President Trump's decision to deploy the Marines, to deploy the U.S. Army National Guard, is an intrusion from the federal government.
Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk.
Now, the state of California is suing the Trump administration. Have we seen anything like this before in U.S. history?
The commander-in-chief of the National Guard in California is the governor. They can deploy the National Guard for, if it's a national disaster, or there's social unrest, as we saw in 2020, the massive uprising against racism. So the interesting part about Trump kind of overstepping Newsom, for lack of a better term, in deploying the National Guard is that Newsom hasn't ordered for the National Guard to go home. He's suing the Trump administration. Cal Matters, which is a nonprofit newsroom here in California, actually reported that in Trump's first term, the state of California sued the Trump administration over 100 times and won about a third of them. So it seems like this is just part two of the same, back and forth between the state of California and the Trump administration.
And it's one thing to send in the Army National Guard, but this decision to send Marines to Los Angeles, first of all, can you help us make that distinction of what that means between the Army National Guard and sending the Marines? What justification did the federal government have for deploying Marines to the city of Los Angeles?
It's the same justification that Trump has been campaigning on, that there is a quote-unquote invasion of illegal aliens or illegal people. He used that to deport over 200 Venezuelans without due process, saying that there's an invasion, which allows him to deport them without due process. With sending the military into Los Angeles, you could kind of give you a picture of how policed the city is right now. Across LA area, we have police from Santa Barbara, from Montebello, from Santa Ana, from all the local jurisdictions are all coming into LA, plus the National Guard, plus the Marines. For what? What is the crime of the people? People are rising up to defend our undocumented workers. People who have papers, people who are citizens, people who are born here are fighting for people who they don't even know. And that's the crime. The crime is to protest, which is our constitutional right. But they don't use that same energy with ICE agents, right? They're coming into our neighborhoods.
And you said something interesting that I hope that we can go back to, which is that this perception and the rhetoric that we hear from President Trump over this being an invasion, and the perception that people outside of Los Angeles, for example, might have of what's going on here when they see images of a car on fire and someone waving a Mexican flag on top of that car, and they think, oh, wow, the entire city of Los Angeles is being invaded and taken over by migrants, which is far from the case. I live here in Los Angeles. This is a very big city. Mm-hmm. The areas where the unrest has been taking place have actually been just very small pockets of the city. Can you give our viewers and listeners a little bit of clarity as to exactly what's going on?
Yeah, like you said, it's where the social unrest or where the process is happening is all centered around the heart of downtown LA, next to City Hall, where the federal building is and the immigration building is at. So it's not all of LA. Like you said, it's a huge city. Has millions of people. So 99.9% of the people at protests are there exercising their right. You might see the media will cover, a very small percentage of people tagging on the building or destroying something, which, I drove by this morning and most of it's already painted over. It's like if nothing ever happened. So, where it's happening, it's a very small area.
Let's talk about immigration policy for a second, and President Trump's decision to ramp up these ICE raids. And I ask this because it raises a lot of questions over who's benefiting from this, which is something that you've been looking at in particular. What's motivating President Trump and his administration, or in other words, who is benefiting from ramping up these ICE raids?
Yeah, I would say who's benefiting the most out of this would be his fan base, his voting base. Trump is not someone who, he's not an outsider in a sense when it comes to attacking our immigrant community. During Obama's administration, who was a Democrat, deported more people than any other president in history, over 2 million people. People were protesting. People were interrupting his meetings, his press conferences. People were out in the streets. And the same thing happened in the Reagan administration, right? The reason why he passed the immigration reform was because there was a sanctuary city movement, right? There was immigrants taken out into the street and protesting. And that's how we make change in this country, is by organizing and mobilizing and applying pressure to the government so that they can give us, some concessions.
Beyond appeasing his fan base and the Make America Great Again movement, there's also the question over the GEO Group, which is one of the biggest private prison companies in the United States, which just signed a 15-year contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement here in the United States, otherwise known as ICE. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's another big beneficiary of this ramp up of attack on the immigrant community is the GEO Group, the detention center, which is north of LA. It's a private prison. And we can also say that who also is benefiting from this is the weapons manufacturers. Every administration, when they come in, they give ICE a bigger budget. And the way they justify that is by attacking the immigrant community, using this racist rhetoric that they are criminals and we need to stop them. So they need the most advanced technology and weapons to be able to attack any kind of uprising.
And finally, Abraham, President Trump is bringing out the military this weekend, not only here in Los Angeles, but in Washington, D.C. too. President Trump is throwing a massive military parade to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. This is a parade that also happens to coincide with President Trump's birthday. Meanwhile, protests are happening in Los Angeles against ICE. Similar protests we are now seeing pop up in cities like Tampa, Florida, and Houston, Texas. Is this a show of force by President Trump? And if so, what exactly is the message that he is trying to send here?
Yeah, I would agree that it's for him to show a show of force to satisfy his fan base. But I don't think the people of the United States are gonna take it. I've been seeing that there's protests that have been called across the country, not just in LA. So I think Saturday is going to be an interesting day to see millions of people coming out and in defense of the undocumented community, and also to send a message to the Trump administration that we're not going to let you just come into our neighborhood and bully us. We're going to stand up and fight back.
And to that end, do you think that this is part of a larger movement? Like, do you see this as being possibly a turning point in the way Americans are perceiving this crackdown on immigration here in the U.S.?
This is a turning point for the class consciousness here in the United States. We're on the heels for the last 19 months. Thousands and probably even millions of people across the country have coming out to stop a genocide in Palestine, to protest the Biden administration. Now, that same generation, those same people are coming out to protest against ICE and against the Trump agenda. LA is a very unique kind of situation just because in the last 6 months, we've seen the community come out in support for folks who lost their homes in the Altadena fires, in the Palisades fire. It was the people that came out who provided mutual aid, housing, food, shelter, anything that they needed.
And only to build on something that you just said, because you bring up what's happening in Gaza and Palestine, one thing that I've been seeing a lot of at these protests is Palestinian flags being waved. There's solidarity, there's intersectionality here. And I think you're right when you say that it speaks to how LA is unique in many ways, but this very strong sense of community that exists in Los Angeles, like you said, it zooms out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is not the first time where there's that internationalism connected here when there's an uprising in the United States. We saw that in Ferguson. There was videos of Palestinians in Gaza who were, giving the people in Ferguson tips on how to handle tear gas.
Ferguson will make mention. This is a city in Missouri that was one of the first to experience protests linked to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Correct, yeah. And I saw the same thing on Saturday, which, I born and raised here. I'm from Inglewood. And on Saturday, covering the protests on the Compton side, seeing, the hood out there rocking a keffiyeh and a Palestinian flag and tagging on the walls, "Free Gaza" and "Get rid of ICE," it really kind of connected the whole world together, that we're all in this together. They connected the struggles, that this is a movement against the state and against the system.
Abraham Marquez, thank you so much for joining us on The Take.
Thank you for inviting me.
And that's The Take. If you're short on time but still want to catch the highlights, check out our YouTube Shorts. We post quick clips with the best moments from our episodes that you won't want to miss. It's a great way to stay connected. Check them out, and I'll see you tomorrow.